Good evening, I'm Faye Kwan. Our top stories for tonight. Netanyahu returns to the White House to meet with Donald Trump, and the US president threatens extra 10% tariffs on nations that side with BRICS. All this and more coming up on AWANI International. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is due to meet with US President Donald Trump later today. It marks Netanyahu's first visit to the White House since the two leaders collaborated in an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities last month. He had told reporters on Sunday he believed talks with Trump would help advance talks on a ceasefire deal with Hamas. Netanyahu added that there is an opportunity to forge new diplomatic ties with other countries. One such effort reportedly includes a potential security pact with Israel's longtime enemy, Syria. Meanwhile, indirect negotiations between Israel and Hamas resumed in Qatar last night, focused on a US-backed proposal for a 60-day ceasefire and hostage release. The latest version of the deal is said to include American guarantees and a commitment to continued talks toward a permanent ceasefire. However, it remains unclear whether key sticking points can be resolved. In other news, President Donald Trump says the US will impose an additional 10% tariff on any country that seeks to join the BRICS group of developing nations. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said there would be no exceptions to this policy for countries that align themselves with what he called anti-American policies under BRICS.
However, Trump did not clarify or expand what he meant by anti-American policies in his post. His administration has been rushing to finalize dozens of trade deals ahead of a July 9th deadline, when his retaliatory tariffs were initially scheduled to begin. Officials now say the tariffs will take effect on August 1st instead. So far, Washington has secured trade agreements only with the UK and Vietnam. Trump's announcement comes as BRICS holds its latest summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. His threat followed a joint statement from BRICS leaders on Sunday, which appeared to take aim at the president's tariffs as they criticized unjustified unilateral protectionist measures. The group also voiced symbolic support for member state Iran, condemning recent military strikes without naming the US or Israel, which have been blamed for the operation. In 2024, Trump threatened to impose 100% tariffs on BRICS members if they move forward with plans to launch a common currency to rival the US dollar.
Meanwhile, China opposes tariffs being used as a tool to coerce others, says its foreign ministry. This is in response to US President Donald Trump's threat of an extra 10% tariff on countries aligning themselves with the BRICS group of developing nations. The use of tariffs serves no one, said spokesperson at the ministry Mao Ning at a regular press conference.
金砖机制是新兴市场和发展中国家合作的重要平台，倡导开放包容、合作共赢，不搞阵营对抗，不针对任何国家。关于加征关税，中方已经多次阐明了立场：贸易战、关税战没有赢家，保护主义没有出路。刚刚我已经介绍了我们对金砖机制的一个看法。我们觉得金砖机制是国际上的一个积极力量。金砖合作是开放包容的，不针对任何国家。那么至于关税，我们一贯反对搞关税战、贸易战，反对以关税作为胁迫、施压的工具。肆意的加征关税不符合任何一方的利益。
We'll be back with more after the break. Stay tuned.
Berita hebat untuk pelanggan Astro Movies dan Epic Card. Prime Video kini termasuk dalam langganan anda.
Who's the action hero now?
Anda boleh stream 24 jam sehari. Pelbagai filem kesukaan anda.
Amazing.
Janab. Hindustan.
Amazon Originals.
It's big.
Are you ready? Serta K-Favorites terkini. Semua ni dan banyak lagi.
Kalian pilih video siapa yang akan tayang.
Pelanggan Astro Movies dan Epic Pack. Stream Prime Video sekarang dengan Astro. Anda juga boleh langgan Prime Video melalui aplikasi My Astro.
Welcome back. US President Donald Trump is hitting out at former close ally Elon Musk over his plan to launch a new political party. Speaking to reporters on Sunday, Trump called the idea of forming a third party ridiculous, saying it would only add to confusion within the current two-party system.
I think it's ridiculous to start a third party. We have a tremendous success with the Republican Party. The Democrats have lost their way, but it's always been a two-party system. And I think starting a third party just adds to confusion. It really seems to have been developed for two parties. Third parties have never worked. So he can have fun with it, but I think it's ridiculous.
Musk announced over the weekend on his social media platform X that he had formed the America Party to challenge both Republicans and Democrats. He said the new party may back a presidential candidate in the future, but its initial focus over the next 12 months would be on House and Senate races. However, it is unclear if the party has been formally registered with US election authorities. Musk, who was born outside the United States and is ineligible to run for president, has not said who would lead the party. He previously floated the idea of forming a new political movement during his public feud with Trump, a falling out that saw him step down from his administration role and repeatedly criticized the president's tax and spending plans.
Meanwhile, Malaysia is championing the establishment of an ASEAN AI safety network to promote responsible innovation and strengthen regulatory capacity across Southeast Asia. This is part of its response to the growing global fragmentation in technology governance.
Speaking at the BRICS Leaders Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim warned that the global technology landscape is increasingly fractured along geopolitical lines, creating structural barriers for developing economies and deepening inequality.
Once the global commons of innovation technology is now splitting along geopolitical lines, export controls, national security restrictions, and diverging standards are creating parallel systems. That is why Malaysia welcomes the BRICS statement on AI governance. We support a vision of AI that serves development, not domination, one that embeds ethics, reduces inequality, and respects human dignity. Our national AI roadmap and AI governance guidelines reflect these principles. ASEAN is championing the establishment of AI Safety Network, a regional initiative to strengthen governance and capacity in this fast-moving concern. We also view the ASEAN Digital Economic Framework Agreement as a vital platform. With the right investment and standards, ASEAN's digital economy could reach $2 trillion by 2030. Excellencies, the path ahead will not be shaped by drift. It will be shaped by resolve. Malaysia stands ready to work with BRICS and other partners for a fairer global economy, a more coherent digital future, and a multilateralism that delivers. Thank you.
Malaysia was invited to the summit as a BRICS partner country, and Anwar used the platform to highlight the implications of digital fragmentation for small and medium economies, particularly in Southeast Asia. He underscored the need for multilateral cooperation and regional leadership to ensure that emerging technologies, especially artificial intelligence, support development rather than domination.
Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has urged leaders of the BRICS group of developing nations to take the lead on reforms during the summit in Rio de Janeiro. Lula made the comments during a session titled Strengthening Multilateralism, Economic Financial Affairs and Artificial Intelligence.
Leaders of the BRICS also condemned attacks on Iran, Gaza and Kashmir during the summit, presenting the bloc as a defender of multilateral diplomacy while indirectly criticizing US military and trade policy. With forums such as the G7 and G20 groups of major economies hamstrung by divisions and the disruptive America First approach of US President Donald Trump, expansion of the BRICS has opened new space for diplomatic coordination. The original BRICS group gathered leaders from Brazil, Russia, India and China at its first summit in 2009. The bloc later added South Africa and last year included Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates as members. This is the first summit of leaders to include Indonesia. More than 30 nations have expressed interest in participating in the BRICS, either as full members or partners. Expansion of the BRICS has added diplomatic weight to the gathering, which aspires to speak for developing nations across the global south, strengthening calls for reforming global institutions such as the United Nations Security Council and the International Monetary Fund. Lula told attendees at the meeting that BRICS members' voting power at the IMF should reflect their economic weight by reaching at least 25% instead of the current 18%, and hailed the BRICS New Development Bank as an alternative to mainstream international financial institutions. He also doubled down on his call for a global and representative governance for artificial intelligence to ensure that its benefits are shared equitably.
Britain and France are poised for a symbolic reset during an upcoming state visit by French President Emmanuel Macron to the UK. This is according to an analyst ahead of Macron's arrival in London for a 3-day state visit on Tuesday.
Macron is expected to meet King Charles, speak at Parliament and take part in a UK-France summit with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
I don't expect major announcements. I think there's lots of symbolic value to this visit because it's a state visit, and state visits are all about symbols, aren't they? I believe that it's a time. The timing, of course, is very important because it comes at a moment where, well, there's a need, I think, to catch up after the damage done to the bilateral relationship after the Brexit negotiations, when France was more or less playing the bad cop in that sense. Well, the main area, the most, I think, obvious one and the one that would be really put forward is on defense. We're talking about two countries that share more or less the same capacities in terms of industrial weapons manufacturing, and both have a nuclear deterrence. They're the only two countries in Europe that have, so they have the same outreach in terms of also diplomacy. So they really want to show that their might. I mean, the visit is about opening a new page in the relationship, but one country is in the EU and one is out, right? And so I think the limit of this bilateral relationship is that when it comes to migration, defense, to education, to energy, to trade, a lot of what will be discussed during this visit, the EU comes in the way because a lot has to also be dealt at EU level.
Ties between France and Britain have improved since Starmer took office last year, brought closer by shared concerns over Russian aggression toward Ukraine and the need to rearm Europe as US President Donald Trump plots a more isolationist position for the world's largest economy. During the summit, the two leaders are also expected to discuss measures to tackle a growing number of channel crossings by migrants.
That report wraps up AWANI International for tonight. Stay tuned for our reports on the rivalries, strategies and the shifts behind the power affairs driving the new global order. Visit international.astroawani.com for more and be sure to follow our social media accounts at Power Affairs. I'm Faye Kwan, thank you for watching and good night.